My principal task here is to introduce Talya Baharal. Her exhibition is at the Cove Gallery. And her husband, Jean. And her exhibition, which is spectacular, is at the Cove Gallery. I know it will be open next week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. There's a poster in the window. You can check the hours.
Tomorrow too.
Tomorrow. Who's there tomorrow?
I'm there tomorrow.
Wonderful. I'm also here, before I introduce Talya, I'd like to say something about the Getterman Artist Residency Committee. We are a fabulous committee. I will say who we are, because I didn't want to miss anybody. Meredith Anderson, Rebecca Nagel, Gabrielle Rossmer, Pooley Cohan, Deb Garnett, Maura Cronin, and me. And the residency was created by Gordon Getterman in 2005, and in 2008 we started this Distinguished Artist Teacher program, and that's what the invitation for Talya Baharal is for, that specifically. And she gives a talk here, which would have been at the Cape Ann Museum, except that they are doing remodeling. So we couldn't do it there. We decided, okay, we'll stay in our own home territory. It'll be much easier. So our collaboration is with the Cape Ann Museum. And what else do I want to say about that? Gordon's intention with the residency was to bring in new, exciting people, for us not to be a tight little island without anything new happening. And so that was when I started, actually, the Distinguished Artist Teacher in 2008. And we have had some other illustrious people, Steve Imony, Joan Snyder, Tim Hawksworth, have all been here as artist teachers. So actually, I'm going to make a plug now. If anybody is interested in joining our committee, we would love to have you. There are a few people here who've been on the committee before: Yana Coffin, Terry Del Percio, Linda Sojita. I think that's it for now. Anne Marie Crotty. And Robin was the past president for 2 years, which was incredible. Okay, so now I would like to talk to you about Talya. Talya Baharal is a multidisciplinary artist living and maintaining her painting studio in New York's Hudson Valley. Widely recognized, exhibited, and published as a studio art jeweler and sculptor for over 3 decades, she was also the recipient of a New York Fine Arts Fellowship and other grants and awards, and was a juror on NIFA Sculpture Craft category in 2011. Baharal was the curator of a well-respected anthology of contemporary silver jewelry published by Lark Books in 2011. While Baharal is primarily a self-taught artist, upon moving to Maine in 2012, she began focusing exclusively on painting and took several workshops with the renowned abstract painter teacher Steve Imony. Upon her return to New York in 2016, she studied with Fran O'Neill and John Lees at the New York Studio School. Her abstract painting work has since been presented in several solo exhibitions in Chelsea, New York City, Harrodsburg, California, Torrington, Connecticut, and Rockland, Maine. Baharal is represented by Lulo Gallery, Harrodsburg, California, and Triangle Gallery, Rockland, Maine. I am absolutely thrilled to introduce Talya Baharal. Yay!
I am full of admiration for you, not only for your amazing work as a painter and sculptor, but also the work that you do for the community and supporting artists is inspiring. And I also wanted to thank the committee, the Getterman Committee, for inviting me, and all of you for coming to listen to me. And so I, from near and far. Okay, so What's in a Voice is the title of this talk, and I am, as Ruth presented me, a multidisciplinary artist in terms of the journey that I have been on. I began with jewelry, and then I started working also with sculpture, and that has led, that vocabulary that was built up over those years, 30 years of that, I think, have shown and have become more mature in painting, but it's basically the totality. So my journey to painting is through those, so I'll spend a little bit of time at first talking about that journey. But I will begin with my mother. I was born in Israel, and my mother was an absolutely amazing interior designer. So if there is something I can definitely say that as a child, I received an awful lot of aesthetic training to my eye, just living in her environment. She also was an amazing wearer of jewelry, all tribal jewelry. She had rings a lot more than I do on her fingers, always, lots of them. And so I also grew up with jewelry in my life. Although I'm self-taught, that was definitely a beginning of the aesthetic. And although I'm self-taught, I am extremely lucky to have had friends that have guided me and supported me along the way. And some of them are here and have come from afar. And there's one in particular I want to do a shout out to, and that's my friend Portia. I'll get a little emotional throughout a few more things, who has held my hand through many a presentation and other issues to do with that, and many other issues too. But she's been amazing in guiding me along the way. And so, thank you. So, I'm in New York City, it's 1984, and I'm floundering in New York City. Long story I'm not going to get into, a career that I thought I was in was not going to be, and I'm really happy about it today. But I decided to go take a jewelry class at the 1970 in New York. And for 3 months I spent there, I made 2 little pieces. And just as that ended, and I had those 2 little pieces in my hand, enters Gene Gnida, my husband. He has been, well, first I'm going to say, he saw those 2 pieces, and we very quickly were in love, and we were very quickly, together. And within literally weeks, he set up a jewelry studio in our apartment, a studio apartment on the Upper East Side, 5th floor walk up. And I know for sure that had he not done that, I would not have been serious enough about it, because I didn't have the wherewithal. And that really pushed me into starting to become a serious artist. So then and this is him and me, many years ago, with the pottery that he has been making along the way. So we actually started to work. I just want to also say, it's on Gene's shoulders that I really stand. He's already said that it's true. And he has set up all the studios along the last 40 years, okay, and has done everything to support me. we set up a studio. We became partners at that point. And we set up a studio and we started making jewelry that we were selling through craft shows and galleries around the country. The Baharal United Jewelry Collection. And so this is a booth. And so here are some examples of the jewelry that we made a living for 30 years selling. And all the jewelry was made of silver, and then it had some copper and bronze. But basically it was jewelry that was sort of relatively sculptural and no stones, and it was kind of the way we like to work. And so here's another example. Now, this example shows work that I mostly did, which was more organic and being a relatively intuitive kind of character who likes to do things and is not a planner. This would be mostly my things. This, on the other hand, would be a good example, which I'm wearing if anybody wants to see it later, of a piece that Gene would make. So he made the pieces that were really perfect. I made the pieces that were more organic. And so we come to the Baharal method. The Baharal method is an inside joke. So because I'm not a planner, and I do not like to work that way, and he is the planner-in-chief, there was a time at the beginning when I was making things my way that he was a little sarcastic. And he said, "Oh, there's the Baharal method." And then slowly it became obvious to both of us that that's the way I need to do things. And I'm so glad that I did find my way to do things, because it set me off in another direction that is totally mine, whereas we worked together on the jewelry that we made a living alongside. So I started I started to figure out how to make my own constructions and my own things, and I started a jewelry collection that was all based on sort of dwellings, but also it was based on the idea of jewelry usually is an adornment. You know, you wear it, but you're kind of wearing it that other people look at it, even though many times it's a very important piece that you care about, right? But it's usually seen by others. These works were done for the wearer as well, to be able to enjoy. So you're looking in, and you choose whether to tell anybody and share it with anybody. And then other ones that I made in that collection were the viewer saw the front, you knew what was in the back, and you chose to share that secret or not. And so as I was preparing for this lecture, I suddenly came up, this was done in 1991. I suddenly saw a piece that I totally forgot about, and the front, and then the back was painted with acrylics, and there we are. So I started then. Another piece from that time, getting a little bit more abstract. I made a lot of rings that also I thoroughly enjoyed making. And I never sized them because it was just too difficult. So, but they always found their finger, which is really true. They really did. This is, I'm wearing this piece right now. And again, that's getting more abstract and more, I think, into the painterly realm, even though it's about 15, 20 years before I started painting. Then I started making some sculpture with wire. I took a workshop at Women's Studio Workshop in Hudson Valley. And I started making pieces that were wire that I manipulated by hand, steel wire, and then handmade paper. And I made a body of work that I called skin forms, because it was all about the subject of jewelry. So there were small objects, there were wall pieces, like drawing with wire, and then, so Jean was making ceramics at the time as well. You know, we're both still making our jewelry for a living, but he was making ceramics. And we had a two-person show at the gallery in Louisville, Kentucky. And so some of the pieces were really big and hanging as well. And here's an installation of some of the wall pieces. That led to a sculpture grant that I got from this Women's Studio Workshop. And they had an art farm where they grew fibers, they grew plants that then became fibers that were made into paper. And so they chose 3 people, and I was one of them, to work with it and make sculpture out of it. So here I am taking steel wool and dipping it in pulp, and I made this dreadlock piece. It's about 12 feet high. Is an installation of the show that then was at Marist College, and a few other shots. And that show traveled to quite a few venues. And so it's all steel wire armatures and handmade flax and abaca. Another shot from there. Spinal columns I was obsessed with at the time, so I made a whole lot of those. And here's a close-up of that. That led to Contemporary Craft in Pittsburgh that gave me a 1-month grant to come and spend in Pittsburgh. And it was titled Big Steel, Little Steel. Big Steel obviously is Pittsburgh and all the defunct steel plants there. And Little Steel was me and a bunch of kids from high school going around rummaging and collecting little pieces of steel, which then I went on to, here after preparing the material, I went on to include, embed them in paper, in wall pieces, and in sculptures. So these are some of those sculptures that were done. Again, you'll see a neck piece, very tall neck piece. Again, I always seem to go back to my jewelry roots. And the Pittsburgh place was right on the corner of Smallman and 21st. Now this is a very, very important map because I fell in love with it, and it has spawned a whole huge body of work that's coming up shortly. Not a lot of it, but show you enough. But Smallman and 21st, I just fell in love with this. I saw all these stains in the streets there, and it was just, I was swooning all over those things. So I then meant to make this piece, and then I then came home, and the inspiration of that led to me doing a whole body of work called Urban Landscape, which was brooches and neck pieces. And I tried to get the effects that I saw in the roads, the rust effects and the salt stains, all of that, and figure out how to make that work with silver. And this would be the first, on the right, would be the first brooch that I made, very much just like that manhole. And just as an aside, I went on Google Earth the other day to just look at that particular corner, and Pittsburgh fixed it. So I was very disappointed. I thought I would see a bronze plaque or something, but it wasn't going to happen. All right, so here are some of the brooches that I made, and that was a really big body of work that kind of for about 8 years I worked on it. And I don't think I know. I can see once I started looking back how so much of that is part of my painting. The textures and the colors and the different vocabulary. So this is a few of those pieces. They're all silver as a base, and they're combined with steel, iron filings, and different things to sort of bring out the coloration as I'm working. So these are a few more of those pieces. Here begins the painting journey. So Jean signed up for a workshop with Steve Imani and in Maine, and I came along for the ride. And when I met Steve, when I came to visit there, he saw this piece, the one on the right, and he sort of poked his finger on my chest and said, "You're a painter." Now, obviously, I was really ready. We'd been working for 30 years doing the jewelry and sculpture, and I was ready for a change. So here we are. We're in Maine. We moved to Maine, and the first painting that I completed in Maine was the one on the right, which you can see is obviously directly correlated with that piece. These are more paintings that I did in Maine in those first a few years. And again, jewelry forms, hanging, potential hanging things, just the vocabulary very much a part of what came before. Another couple of paintings made there, and these two are more probably landscapey, which is not really what I normally do, but it shows up every now and again. So we are in Maine. We are not hardy enough for Maine, and we decide that we are going home to the Hudson Valley. So we're back in the Hudson Valley, and now after moving and setting up and all of that, I found out about this workshop, painting workshop in New York City at the New York Studio School. And I take the workshop with Fran O'Neill, a painter. And she, I think it was an extremely seminal experience for me to take that workshop, because it opened up a whole bunch of other things for me that I had not. I was a new painter. I was only a couple, 3 years. And this really opened up. And for people here who are taking the workshop, you will see that I will show you some of the things that I learned from Fran and what went on from there. So she sent us to MoMA on the first day. And I think it's interesting to show this process, so that's why I'm showing you. She sent us to MoMA and said, pick a painting and draw a detail from it, and then come back. So I picked this painting and I drew a detail. I picked this painting because I thought it had a lot of interesting angles and interesting sort of elements in it that I thought I could work with. So I think I approach a lot of things as a sculptor, essentially, and so I see things that way. I also work with material that way in terms of paint, so and other things. So anyway, so I picked that thing. I drew this at MoMA with the charcoal on the floor, and I kind of tried to clean it up, and took it back to the studio there. And then she had us blow up and scale down, scale up and scale down, more details from the detail. So you see that on the top right. And then blow it up again, one of them, choose one, blow it up again, and then cut it up, and cut the shapes up, and the negative shapes, everything. And then we played, and that's what we will also hopefully do, wherever you guys want to do that. Start arranging compositions. And then based on choosing one composition or two or however many, a painting started to emerge. So I did that. I chose a certain shape on the left, you see it, and then I started adding the assorted pieces that I also started to collage and paint. So what you have is, from this Orozco painting, it went to that, which I think is so interesting, because one thing has nothing to do with each other, obviously, but yet that's what happens when you take a detail and just start playing with it in different ways. So I did that. She also pushed me to go bigger, all the time, no matter what, go bigger. So that was, this was 90 inches wide by 66. It was 9 pieces of 22 by 30 that I just connected together and did that piece in that workshop. And then I finished that piece in the workshop, and this piece, which is like heavily, she introduced me to ink. And ink is, I just adore ink. And I will be talking about ink in the workshop. It's just the most wonderful thing to create different interesting lines, and there's a quality to it that speaks to me. So that was the other piece. She also tried to push me into color. As you see, up until now, I am in color. And I did this piece, which I still have a little discomfort with, because it's too many colors for me. I've gotten bolder, but it's an interesting question to always ask. Why are you uncomfortable? So that's another issue. So too much color for me. So I kind of toned it down a little bit and started working more with my form language, and then proceeded to introduce color more and more. And I work, by the way, with acrylic paint only. And acrylic and different materials like, graphite, ink, anything I get my hands on, frankly, except oil. I tried oil once, maybe for about an hour, and I hated it. So, and it also takes too much time. I don't know how to manipulate it. I know how to manipulate that, and as I said, I think it's the material person in me that just needs to work with something that I can manipulate. Well, oil, if I just, you know how to manipulate it. I don't. So these were paintings that I did still, and I still stay sometimes in one color space with just a little accent and so on. So these would be some of those later on that I was doing. And then starting to get more and more to slightly more color, and then went crazy with this blue painting. And every now and again I go crazy into some crazy painting, like the yellow one in the show. Every now and again I just feel it, so I go there. And then pink. Oh my God, I hated pink my whole life. You wouldn't have caught me near pink until I started painting. And now I adore it. It's like one of the most wonderful colors in a variety of ways. So this one is Pink Madness, and this one is another crazy thing. And I'm kind of thinking about an alternative name for it, Shock and Awe, but it's really me feeling shock and awe. I don't know that anybody else does, but I look at it and I go, whoa, too much. But anyway, that's quieter. That's in the show, by the way, this piece is in. So ink has brought me to just, I love line. Line has been through everything I've done. It's a major part of my vocabulary, and I just love it. So all three mediums. And I'm now going to just jump back, just a quick little thing to tell you that when I started to work with the wire in the sculpture, I'm sitting at our my bench in our studio in Hudson Valley, the year's 2000, and I'm manipulating wire for a sculpture. And on top of the windowsill are these drawings, 2 drawings that I remembered. Oh my God, I did those when I was 17 years old, living in London in a bedsitter. I was working during the day, and I came home, and I don't know why I picked up paint and pens. I really don't know. I don't have any memory of why I did it, but I did. And so these drawings, which here are, there's like 7 of them, and here they are. So I'm going to go right back to here, the one in the middle with the lines. It was just looking like the sculpture that I was manipulating. I suddenly understood, my God, wire, line, like the voice began at a very early age. And who knows what makes a voice, right? You just don't know where it comes from. Sometimes you do, but I didn't. I really don't know. So so from that, line has been reappearing, between the sculpture, the jewelry, and into drawings. These are an ink drawing, and it's really always there. A couple other drawings the last few years. So it's the expression of line, when it's like super delicate with ink, you can do it so beautifully, and then it can go really strong and demanding. And here I see how line can show us around a composition, even though it looks like it's not balanced, but I think it is balanced because it's kind of telling you in a way where to go. So this is a piece done during Corona. And here's another example of a very bold ink and paint, and more very line-oriented drawings with some paint that I have done that I'm partial to and hope to do more of. So line and shape in nature and landscape for me is really mostly about focusing on the detail. I rarely do the big panorama. I rarely look at the big landscape. It's like I focus on something. So I'm seeing, as I'm preparing, I'm seeing, oh my God, look at this. It's the naked tree limbs and so on. So these are the things that have been really interesting to me that I discovered later, that they are influential in the work. And here's cracks in the ice, and here's a painting that it obviously was influenced by. Again, the the ice on the river there's a form, and then that painting is done, not looking at it, but it comes from somewhere. I think there is, this memory mind in all of us, where things filter in and then suddenly they come out in different ways. I spent a bunch of time now trying to figure that out. So that's when I did the What's in the Voice little book. And so that's the memoir. And I call it unintended compositions. They're just everywhere. And I focus a lot on things on the floor or on the roads, because I don't have the greatest balance, so I'm always looking down. So there's a whole world right down there. So I started doing this series of What's in the Voice, which was really trying to trace back the jewelry, how it is part of my painting, and so I started to combine images of that, but then yet doing a whole completely different composition with that embedded in it. So that's the What's in the Voice series, and some of these are also at the show. Basically, I collage an image, and then I work with paint and ink, and it's a dialogue between the two. So it's a dialogue between the materials, and it's a dialogue with myself about what has been in my past, what is in my future, what's in my present. So unintended composition. So here's one of my favorites: road repairs. Road repairs drive me wild. I don't know why, but they do. I just love these crazy shapes. That they're so unintended. They were just done by the guys that were, filling the potholes. And I think they're fantastic. So here's another one. And here's a painting that I did, not looking at it, but now that I look back, I said, oh my God, look, it really must have come from there. Oh, who knows? So what remains is sort of a theme that goes through all of my work, So anyway, another one, just an amended scene in a sake bag, and there is a painting. So I don't know if, it's how I feel. I must have, retained that information. Again, just a little thing, Masmoka, the floor at Masmoka drives me crazy. I just love it. They have gazillions of repairs there, and I love all these shapes. So there's another example of something that might be. So, I started working more and more with collage, and that is something we will, concentrate on, I hope, at the workshop. And that is taking older paintings, cutting them up, and starting to include them in with paint and going into them, out of them. It's a way to start a painting, and it's a way to activate a painting. And I love the dialogue of that. So, and this is at the show, and there's a simpler one. This one would be one that I began with that and went off of it. And this one would be one that I added into that, but not what you can actually necessarily always tell, but these are all very collage-based. Another one that's at the show. So, just very briefly on issues of taste and what you think of yourself or what you want to come out. Many times, believe it or not, I do yearn for simplicity. It doesn't come out the way I yearn. But you cannot shed your skin, so it's about becoming comfortable with that skin and then figuring out, well, that is my voice, and you better be with it and make it sing. So I do overwork when I do something that doesn't really happen like that. I start overworking, and many times I have lost good paintings that way. Jean will attest to that. He always says you should stop. And why do you keep going at it? But there is an OCD thing that happens, and I'm definitely there. So this is an OCD piece that I think was successful. I do enjoy, do I love the moments when it happens and it's like, oh, just like that, we all do. I mean, it's just, we live for the zone, right? But I also love the journey of searching and rescuing something and digging in and making it work over and over again. It's crazy, but there's something wonderful about it too. And it also, I think, well, it may be sick, but it also takes some bravery to kill things you fall in love with. Every painter knows all about killing the loved ones, you know. And so I think it's one of the fun things of painting. It's also one of the hard things of painting, because in a few other things, if you're a writer, you can keep every copy. But once you've changed something, it's gone, you know, and redoing it in abstraction when you work intuitively never comes out the same. So here's, these two pieces go together, and one was a zone, and which is obvious, and one was overworked, but I think I brought it to a place where I think the two of them actually work together. And so there's an example of that. So I am self-taught, but I don't live in a vacuum. So here's a few of the painters that I love and have been inspired by. Miro, Robert Ryman, a minimalist painter that I love. What he does with white is just unbelievable. Suzanne Fricone, who's an amazing contemporary painter. Her shapes, her color, incredible. Philip Guston, I'm sure I don't need to say much more because everybody knows him, and I love his work. Franz Klein. Magdalena, I also am very inspired by sculpture, so Magdalena Abakanowicz, fantastic sculptor, and Anthony Tapayes, who I love for years and years, and Cy Twombly. Mark Bradford is a international American fantastic works with collage. I mean, what he does with collage is extraordinary. And Cornelia Parker is a British sculptor, a conceptual sculptor, who went and took a burnt barn and recreated this incredible sculpture. And so there is a conceptual aspect to it. I don't always love conceptual work, but when it sings, it sings. So this is an example of that. And then, of course, Matisse. And Richard Serra, who's more well known for his incredible sculptures, but I just love his paintings as well, and I love his shapes. They're so strong, minimal but powerful. And then lastly, William Scott, a British painter who I adore his shapes and colors, and then of course Giacometti. So just a quick homage to Giacometti is this is one image of our studio, and we've had that ice cream chair hanging in every studio we've been in for 40 years. And because the story of Giacometti is that he had a very small studio and he had a chair, one chair, and then it was always sort of up in the ceiling with a rope, and when someone came to visit him, he would lower it down. So we've always hung this chair, this ice cream chair. And then yet look on the right, I'm saying to myself, my God, where did that chair come from when I'm 17 years old? I have no idea, but synchronicity, I guess, somewhere. So this is my studio in Kingston. I live in the Hudson Valley in Kingston, New York. And a couple shots of my studio, and this is my storage of paintings and showroom. And these are the tools of my trade. I don't use brushes. Let's put it this way, rarely. And I love silicone bowl scrapers and all kinds of anything but a brush. So these are some of the tools of my trade. And a couple of solo exhibitions. I'll just show some installations. And some paintings that are at the show, which I hope you go to see if you haven't. And lastly, so this I'll read, because I don't think I'll repeat it as well. I paint for moments of clarity. I paint for the times I find the courage to destroy and rebuild. And I paint to feel alive. And this piece is at the show, and funnily enough, it's called Attempting to Speak, which is what I've just done. And I yield the floor. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, shout.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
The ink seems so thick and heavy. Are you talking about printer's ink or?
No, I'm talking about sumi ink. Sumi ink, walnut ink. Also, I use acrylic inks that I find, different colors. Sometimes I want a little bit of color in the ink. But sumi ink is the base, and walnut ink is just wonderful. It's this brown, beautiful brown. And I work with ink on paper, but I also work in ink on the panel, on wood panel that is not primed, because then it sinks into it. Now, ink on acrylic paint is horrible. It just, just doesn't look, it's very shiny, it's very weird. So ink to me is either on its own or as an underpainting. And usually I bring it back in, if it's a painting, in a collage piece, as well. So that's where I play with it. But it's not printer's ink.
And do you pour it, or do you, because if you're not using a brush.
Well, that's one place I do use a brush sometimes for the bigger strokes. But I also have this wonderful thing, I don't know, what the hell is it, Jean, that you cut up for me, 1 million pieces that are this plasticky thing. Well, anyway, you will see it at the workshop. It's this plastic thing that you can slightly manipulate. It's like a credit card, really. Think of a credit card, a plastic credit card. And the way, I started to manipulate the ink with it, you can create these very thin, beautiful lines. You can also push it out, and it becomes, much bigger. So that whole life of a line is so exciting with ink. I adore it.
Didn't you bring a bunch?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, Jean cut up a whole bunch for you guys. So yeah, it's wonderful. And then of course, I can use a sponge. I can pour it and see what happens. You could make a line and you could spray it with some water, and then it does other things. There's so many things you can do with ink. So. Okay. So thank you very much. I appreciate you listening.